The first strand in the math standard that we're going to cover, number one, is counting and cardinality. So this covers four different concepts. There's counting out loud, knowing number names and symbols, and counting to tell the number of objects, and then comparing numbers and quantities. So each of those four concepts has to happen in order to really get kids to the point where they understand numbers and where they understand counting amounts. It's where they build that number sense. So a lot of times when we start with counting and teaching how to count, we usually end up doing a very similar method to the way we teach the alphabet. So we start by teaching the alphabet song, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Now, what I found when I was teaching preschool is no matter how many times we were singing it, the kids didn't realize that the letter A was a letter A and the letter L was a letter L. They had no clue. They could say the word, meaning the letter, but they didn't understand that it was connected to anything. And so a lot of times this happens with kids and counting. We teach them how to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? Yay, my kids are so smart. Except if you were to turn to them and say, how old are you? Well, if no one showed them how to hold up their fingers, they don't have a clue. If you say, give me 3 fish, they just give you a handful. They don't understand that 3 is an amount. So we have to teach them counting in tons of different ways. We need to let them explore the idea of counting and, and manipulate things, and we need to just teach them how to teach. Excuse me. We need to teach them how to count all throughout the day in a number of different ways. So whether it's the toys we're playing or the routines, we need to just show this to them in as many ways as possible. So one thing that's really helpful to understand is that there's more than one skill to teaching counting. So it starts with that whole being able to say the actual word, the number. That's kind of like the alphabet song. So teaching them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and counting up, right? Then they have to be able to actually identify written numbers like a 2 and a 4. So if you say, you know, can you point to the number 5? We want them to know which one is a 5. Now, after that, it comes a little bit more specific. Yes, I know that this is a word, it's a number, and it has a connection to this particular picture, this symbol, but it also represents a specific quantity. So, for example, when I say the word 4 and I'm pointing to the word 4, I'm talking about 4 objects: 1, 2, 3, 4 cookies. So, those 3 things need to happen um, before they can even begin to understand math skills farther on, like, adding and subtracting, for example. So they have to be able to determine how many things are in a set. So if there's a pile of cookies there, how many cookies are in that? So we teach them how to count, right? But they also have to know that each number that I say represents a cookie that I'm pointing at. And cookie number 1 can't be cookie number 5 because that's not how it works. So then they also need to start understanding and seeing which numbers are bigger and smaller than each other. If I have a pile of 100 pennies, I need them to understand that 100 pennies is more than 5 pennies. I need them to understand that 2 pennies is less than 10 pennies. So one way we did this when I was teaching the girls counting is to use touch math. So I'm going to upload a document for touch math that you can download and use. You can laminate it. You could just use regular flashcards, but this is an extra thing to build into them to really make them more useful. So if you notice, each one of these has a dot on it. Okay, so when I'm counting, let's say the number 5, I'm going to take their little finger and I'm going to say 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And each time I count, I'm touching a different dot. So they start to get that touch feedback as well, that sense of touch. They're actually getting some input from that instead of just looking at the picture. Okay, and then when you get to the higher numbers like 6, 7, 8, and 9, you'll notice that the dots are a little bit bigger. These are our double dots. So if I'm counting out the number 8, I'd say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And just adding that extra little step of touching the number as I'm counting, that's going to help them retain that information. So, another thing that I want to mention is that as I'm counting, the last number that I say, that's the name of the number. Just like if I give them a pile to count, we want them to know that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When I say that last number, that's how many are actually in this set, in this pile. So this is an activity that we had done, um, and we've done this in just tons of different ways. Right now I'm using some kind of colored ring. I think it came from like a Twister game. I don't even know. So basically, I just used that to separate the different amounts. And then I would put a card or a flashcard or a little number magnet. I'd put that in the little circle, and then together we would use that big bucket of tokens to count out how many items the number card was showing us. So you can see that these are obviously much higher than you would start with. We started all the way down at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, these are kids doing this work that had been with me for a long time. They had done this in a number of different ways for more than a year at least by this point in time. And so you can see some cards I actually have like a number card, and other cards I have the like the matching picture card. So sometimes there would be like, 27 seahorses or whatever it was. And we would count each one of those, and then we would count each token all the way up to 27. And just practicing the skill in tons of different ways. So you could use a paper plate to separate these out. You could do a piece of paper. We even use like the natural squares that are on this table. We use that just to kind of help divide the actual items out for us. But it's more about the idea of what you're practicing. Don't worry about what it looks like. So we did these counting puzzles. One thing I like about this is it just helps to um, re re what's the word I'm looking for, to it just helps to stress the number order. So the one, then the two, then the three, then the four. And if you let the kids paint the picture or draw the picture, the thing that is nice about that is it becomes a self-correcting tool, meaning that if they don't have the numbers in the right order, then their picture is not going to make sense. So you can see my daughter there working on a bumblebee puzzle. And this helps just to practice the numbers going in a specific order. So this was an activity we did just 100,000 different ways. Right now you can see they've got buckets of different letter shapes, magnets and little wooden numbers and letters. We did this with blocks, like alphabet blocks. We've also done this with cookie cutter letters. Um, so it doesn't really matter. You just are giving them the number in different formats. And so we would fill up sensory tubs. And each kid would get their own sensory tub because I realized right away that having them share one was a disaster. And so then I would give them a tool of some kind, like some kind of tweezer or a spoon or whatever the rule was. And I would have them pick a letter or a number, and we would walk it over and we would match it up either to different flashcards or number strips or alphabets, sentence strips, or in this case, it's a puzzle. Or a puzzle. It's a poster. So this was like a $1 Target poster. Um, and again, obviously, they've practiced this many, many times. So this is way more advanced than what you should expect. But the same concept can be done even with simpler, just writing the number one on a piece of paper and have them pick up the one in their little tweezers and hop it across the room and then find the matching place to put it. And then this is just one thing that we did this in a variety of different ways. Monkey number chains. So I really liked this just because it kind of shows what you can do with something that might not seem like a math tool right off the bat. So we all know barrel of monkeys. I would call out a number or I would hold up a number, and then they would make the number, they would make the monkey chain for the correct number. So if it was five, they had to have five monkeys hanging on there. Um, and I really like doing this because it just kind of gave it an educational twist, but it just goes to show how something that does not appear to be math can actually help with math. So, for example, Hungry Hungry Hippos. If you're playing that game, well, what do? You eat all the marbles, and then when you get done, everybody counts their marbles one at a time. One, two, three. Take a game, turn it into math. You can do all kinds of math during snack time. I can't tell you how many times I had my kids stacking and counting and sorting Cheerios and Fruit Loops. So this is a simple activity. They've just got little muffin cups, and then they put different number stickers or whatever those might be. But again, you could literally just write with a marker inside the muffin cup. One, two, three. You can even put little dots, doesn't matter. Just letting them explore with the concept of math and numbers. And it kind of turns snack time into a game, which buys you a little bit extra time. So just different varieties. Again, another activity here. You can see they're using muffin tins and little colored gems, and they're using tweezers to put them into the different tubs that have, the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just again, letting them explore and experiment with these things, giving them building tools that have numbers in them. Now, no one's standing there saying, okay, put them in number order. No, the kids are going to naturally be doing this as they are getting stronger with these math skills. So, for example, we see this little one here and watch what she's doing. Okay, so you can see she is matching the magnet to a flashcard, and she's got number tokens there, and she's counting them out. And if we look closely, you can see that she doesn't necessarily have the right number of gems under each number, but that's okay. It is not the point of the activity. We're letting her explore and experiment with these numbers, and something very powerful is happening. You can see that she has made a correct match between the actual number magnet and the card. So then you can step in and you can help count these together with them, and that's what teaching would look like at this point. You can see my little one here has her Pete the Cat book. That's from Liz. We got that. And it's just another way to build more math into what you should already be doing. So, there are songs, there is literature that already has math built into it. Make sure you're drawing their attention to it, and you're pointing that out as you're reading together. So one-to-one correspondence, this was something that it kind of goes along with when I see the number 4, I have to know that that means 1, 2, 3, 4 items. So you can see my youngest there just kind of is playing with the pile of goldfish and the dice, whereas my older daughter has actually started taking one fish and putting it on each different dot. So when she has the number 6, she ends up with 6 fish on the dice. This is an example of one-to-one correspondence. So we used these cards, and honestly, they don't have to be anything fancy. I literally wrote the number 1. I wrote the word 1, and then I put 1 dot. Wrote the number 2, word 2, put 2 dots. And then I give them these cards, and I let them experiment and explore the same way that that girl was experimenting earlier. This is what it looked like for us. So you can see here, they all have their different cards. And on this particular day, we were giving them red and yellow tokens, and they would put a token on each circle on the card. And then the nice thing about this activity is that we could do this in tons of different ways. So whether or not you have tokens, that's not important. You can use coins, you can use pieces of popcorn, you can use rocks from your driveway, you can use tiny little, figurine animals, you can use junk toys that you found, buttons, it doesn't matter. When you bring in a new manipulative, it becomes a new activity. And so this was one of those things that we did over and over and over again in hundreds of different ways. Have them grab a token from across the room, carry it over on a spoon, and set it down on the card across the room. Now I'm building in gross and fine motor. There's tons of different ways, but this was one of our favorite ways to practice a ton of different number skills all at once. Okay, so now you're going to head back to the Facebook page. Make sure you comment if you haven't already done so. Either share your thoughts on how you can build more counting and cardinality into your day, or you can share how you are already doing it Just share your thoughts, share your opinion, and we'll get to the next video in just a few minutes.